In the previous movie, we were introduced to a technique that we could use which involved using hue saturation in a blending mode in order to create an edgy color and tone aesthetic. Well, here we're going to take a look at that technique, but we're also going to add a few more steps in order to make this image look even better. This is a portrait of Jack O'Neill, one of my all-time heroes. He's the man who invented the wetsuit. And what I want to do is I want to add a little bit to this photograph by removing color. So one way we can do that is with hue saturation. We'll go ahead and click on our hue saturation adjustment icon here and then desaturate. Next step is going to be to take this to a blending mode of soft light. Now when we do this, we get this interesting aesthetic. Here's our before and after. Yet with a hue saturation adjustment layer, we're pretty limited. We can't really control much else with this layer. So let's go ahead and delete this one and compare this to something else. Well, if we click on our adjustment layer icon and choose black and white, or in the adjustments panel, if we choose the black and white icon here, what we can do is then make the same selection of our blending mode, which we know is soft light or overlay. Now what we can do though is we can modify the tonality of this layer. See how I'm increasing the reds, which in turn is reducing the intensity of the saturation of those reds? It's also brightening up that area of the image. I can also work on other areas as well. You can see the greens affects a little bit of the top area of the image. And I can go through my colors here, seeing if I can make any other tonal changes. So if you want to take things a bit further, many times using an adjustment like this will do the trick. All right, well here we now need to do some advanced blending, right? So we'll double click this layer and then we'll go ahead and click and drag up our blacks that will bring back some of the black detail here in the shirt and in the jacket. Next, hold down Option or Alt, split those sliders to create some transition, and then as always, evaluate your before and then after. See if you're bringing back enough detail. And in this case, I think we are. Here we'll click OK. Well, let's evaluate how we've done. Here's our before and then after. Well, I like this, except I want to remove even more red. Well, in order to get rid of some of this red saturation that's happened here, I'm going to click on my adjustment layer icon. Now choose Hue Saturation. Next, with the Target Adjustment tool selected, I'll go ahead and click on one of these tones. It's going to then take me to my reds. Well, at this juncture, I can then desaturate those reds, pulling out that tone there. Now we're getting to this kind of a vintage, interesting aesthetic. We still have color in the photograph, but we've removed it, we've muted it, and we've added a bit of contrast. Here you can see the overall before, and then now the after. Next thing I want to do is I want to work on the brightness of this side of the photograph here. It's just too bright. So we'll click on our adjustment layer icon. We'll go ahead and select curves. With curves, what I'm going to do is simply darken. And as I darken, we can see that we're shifting color. Let me exaggerate. I'm going to go ahead and darken this too much, but do you notice how there's more color up in here in this area? Well, if we don't want such a strong color effect, what we can do is change our layer blending mode. Let's just keep that in mind. All right, well, we'll go ahead and darken this up. We'll bring our white point down a little bit there and just add a bit of density to this and bring that point down. Next, we'll press Command or Control I to invert the mask. We'll grab that brush tool. Here we want to paint with white. In regards to our brush, we want a pretty big brush, not too big though, so I'll make the brush about the big as the area that I'm working on. In regards to my opacity, I'll take that somewhere below 50%. Next, I'm just going to start to paint this effect into this area here. Just looking to darken up a few of these spots, and I'll also darken up the window here in the background. Bring that down just a bit there, and a little bit on the shoulder as well. Just bringing in a little bit of this darkening effect, kind of evening out the tone there a bit on the photograph. Well, that's looking pretty good. Here you can see our before and then after. We can add even more by clicking and dragging this down. And I think right about there, that's actually pretty good. Maybe just a little bit more on the nose would be nice to bring down. Well, one of the problems is in darkening, I also added a bit of color. I don't want to bring any color back at all. So in this case, I'll take the blending mode to luminosity. So with that layer targeted, we'll click on our blending mode options here. We'll go down to luminosity. That will then remove any added color shift. Because keep in mind, I want to keep things really neutral. I want to create kind of a timeless image with this particular photograph, especially because this is an important person to me. I want it to have just the right look. So I think with this last step, we've really accomplished that. Well, let's evaluate and see how we've done. Here you can see our overall before and then now our after. And in this case, what we learned is that sometimes when creating this look, it's helpful to use a black and white adjustment layer because we have more flexibility, being able to control different areas of the photograph. In this case, this red channel. We can swing this one way or another. We also learned that you can use other adjustment layers in addition, like this one here, which helped us just bring down those reds. It helped us create a little bit more of a muted color palette. And then finally, we examined how we could use curves with masking to paint in an adjustment into a particular area, and we could paint that adjustment in so that it didn't affect the color as drastically by changing that layer blending mode to luminosity.